Good evening and welcome everyone on behalf of the Princeton University Office of Religious Life and Hindu Life program. We're so delighted and honored to be hosting this evening's event. We are in the midst of a very festive time on the Hindu calendar. Some of you may be familiar with this already, known as Navratri, traditionally celebrated over the course of 9 nights, which are just winding down depending on which calendar you follow. Either tonight or tomorrow night is the final in the 9 nights of celebration, and this season of celebrations honors the divine feminine, which is a topic that we're going to delve into this evening with our guest speaker. Let me give you a few words of introduction, but I do want to save the majority of our time to hear from our guest speaker, Sarika. Dr. Sarika Persaud is a doctor of psychology. She's also on Instagram known as Dr. Samosa. So take that as you will. I don't know if that counts as like a dual doctorate, but she has her doctorate in both psychology and samosas apparently. And she is based in New York. She is a supervising psychologist and coordinator of diversity, inclusion, and social justice initiatives at Fordham University in New York, and also serves as an adjunct assistant professor in the psychology MA program at the City University of New York, John Jay College campus. Dr. Persaud, or Sarika's clinical work and writing focuses on a number of areas, including relationship and sexuality issues, particularly for the South Asian diaspora, as well as the intersections of Hindu and Buddhist philosophy and psychoanalysis. Her academic research centers on culturally adapted community mental health interventions for Indo-Caribbean youth. I think this evening, Sarika will bring a lot of these seemingly disparate worlds together in a kind of a fluid and dynamic presentation, really existing at the intersections of all these different fields of theology, of history, of psychology, of gender and sexuality and feminism. So we're in for a treat. This will be a very rich discussion. And with that, let me turn it over to my dear friend, Dr. Sarika Persaud.
Hi, everyone. It's really nice to be here today, virtually. And thank you so much for recognizing my doctorate in Samosa studies. Very few people acknowledge that. They really overlook it for the whole psychologist thing. But, the Dr. Samosa persona is very important to me. So I'm really glad to be here tonight to talk about one of my favorite topics, which is about Shakti, which is about the inner feminine. And you'll see, as Vineet said, it's all very connected with our understanding of ourself, our understanding of our gender, of sexuality, of who we are in the world, and our self-development. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Great. So who or what is Shakti? Because there's a few ways to look at this. So Shakti can be seen as sort of an entity, as a being, as something having manifest form, and that manifest form is feminine. So we can refer to Shakti as, the goddess. But as in Western theology and even, we could say Western indigenous traditions in a way, because it is indigenous to Europe, there's this idea of the great goddess. And it's not really quite equivalent in Hinduism and even in Vajrayana Buddhism. Because any lens through which you see the goddess becomes your great goddess. So if you're looking at Durga, that's your great goddess, if that's what she is to you. If it's Kali, Kali becomes your great goddess and everyone else is an emanation of her. So it's all very subjective in the most free-flowing and beautiful way. So Shakti can be seen as a being, but also Shakti, we use the word even in Hindi as sort of energy. So the energy of something. And Shakti is that unmanifest energy behind all creation. Whether you're looking at the Tantras or you're looking at the Vedas and the Vedic tradition, which of course they intermingle, but no matter which one you're looking at, there is this idea of this feminine energy behind all of creation. I have this quote from the Chandogya Upanishad, which is one of the oldest Upanishads a commentary on the Vedas. Sa yeyam prithvi asyam hidam sarvam bhutam pratishtam. She is what this earth is. Upon her, everything that has come to be is established. Also, I do want to refer to this image, which I think is so beautiful, of the Chandra Bindu, which is, it is used as like the signifier of a nasal sound in Sanskrit, but it's also a symbol in itself. So you might see that some people put this symbol they use it in religious ritual, or they wear it on their head above where the Agya Chakra to be the third eye. And it also symbolizes the intermingling of the inner masculine and feminine, where the crescent part can symbolize the masculine, the sort of grounded holding energy. And the dot itself is the unmanifest energy. So it has all of the potentiality, it's held within it. And yet is unmanifest, it is nothing. Actually, there's really no sound associated with just the dot. And yet when you put it there, it means something. So this is also an idea of how we call Kali, the pregnant nothingness, the pregnant void. So it's emptiness, but it's actually completely full. So we'll talk more about this, but Shakti is itself a paradox by nature. So what is that feminine paradox? So we have all of these different representations of the divine feminine, of Shakti, in throughout Hinduism and Buddhism. So we see these two sides. The light mother. So this is a picture, painting of Lakshmi. So she is beauty, she's light, she's fertility, creation, compassion, and she can even be virginal. And what that means, the word virgin, is not necessarily how it's used colloquially in American English today, meaning not having had sex, but she stands without a man. She stands on her own. It's very rare that you'll see a male deity who stands on his own besides Kartikeya. Otherwise, it's much more common to see a goddess who is unattached. Kali, for example. I mean, sometimes they say Kali is, spouse of Shiva. It's not really quite true. In that specific form of Kali, she stands alone. Right. And there's many other goddesses, Kamakshi. Lakshmi, technically, for a while, she, in ancient times, was seen as a virgin goddess, but, we've come to associate her with Vishnu, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with standing with a partner, right? We're going to talk more about that later. But this idea that there is power in her, she is able to hold this pure potentiality of power by herself. And that state that a woman is in before she enters the beautiful role of being somebody's partner, that there is something about the woman who stands alone, that there is something specific and powerful about that. And then we have these images of the dark mother. Kali is the most popular one, we love her, but there's many others. There's many Chindamasta, many of the Mahavidyas. And then we have these like wrathful deities, wrathful goddesses of Buddhism. And so she is, meant to be repulsive. Some things about her are very scary. And by repulsive, it really meant to disgust. Like, it doesn't even come through in a painting. If you would imagine somebody being in front of you wearing a skirt of severed arms, like freshly severed arms, I don't think your mind can even go there. Some of you, can't even watch like Texas Chainsaw Massacre, in the movie. So imagine if, there's a person, she's embodying that repulsive energy. She's dark. And everything that is dark in the shadows, hidden. She is death, which we're all afraid of, I think, naturally. And she is fear. And she is friends with everything you fear. All her friends are ghosts. She is everything impure. The other forms of the dark mother would be like Matangi. Matangi is what we call the Tantric Saraswati, Nila Saraswati. And she eats everything that is impure. So she eats already eaten food. Uchishta, it's like food that has been touched by someone else's mouth already. So everything, she completely, upends everything that we see as impure. She's like, well, no, that's part of me. So this idea of purity and impurity starts to not even mean anything. And she's sexual. So we're going to talk more about, what this actually means psychoanalytically. But, a very important part of the depiction of Kali is they say she has breasts that are large, and they're breasts that are like pot, like a I don't know, a goblet like. And this image is sexual imagery. Well, the breast can be both sexual and maternal, and the mixing of those two things, because for most people, sexuality and engaging with sex can feel very close to being cared for, and actually true intimacy, it mixes the two in a way that can make people uncomfortable and also is very comfortable for people. So she mixes the sexual, which a lot of people have some sort of nervousness about talking about or engaging with, and also mixes it with the fact that she's still the mother. You know, these have deep meanings for us, deep meanings in terms of, you know, what we see as the erotic, and how we like come to really intimately know another person is so tied to our earliest relationship with our primary caregivers, usually our mother, with feeling held, feeling touched, and knowing that we're seen and loved and paid attention to. It's hard for people to go there. And that's also where this idea of the light and dark mother comes into play. So there's the psychoanalyst, Melanie Klein, who talks about this, the splitting of the mother that occurs in pretty much every person. So if you can imagine, very long time ago when you were an infant, I don't know if you could really put yourself back there, but so first you exist in this state that's sort of like this, there's no self, you're completely like merged with the mother. And then over time you start to, realize, okay, there's a separation. There is a me in all of this. And there's this other thing that sometimes feeds me, sometimes takes care of me, sometimes doesn't feed me, sometimes doesn't pay attention to me, sometimes makes me feel sad. And first we start to take in that entity in parts. So as the breast, as the hand, as the hair, then we start to realize, okay, all those objects, so all those parts, we fuse them together. Okay, there's like a whole human being here. But then we still have this split between, well, I think when it acts good, it's one person, and when it's doing the bad stuff, it's another person. So we have this split between the good mother and the bad mother that we experience as infants. We don't yet. So when I say infants, I really am talking about 3 to 6 months, of the first 3 to 6 months of life. We can't really understand that these are two parts. These are actually parts of the same being. They're split. There's the good mother and the bad mother. And over time, what can happen to people? Well, we hope in healthy development, you learn to fuse the two, you integrate the two, and you start to understand that people have both sides to them. And it's okay. Sometimes people will sort of ignore us, and other times people will pay attention to us, and it's all good. But other times, what happens with a lot of people is we don't quite integrate the two, and we still kind of, in some ways, tend to see people as good or bad. So we only attend to the good side of people, and we don't want to see the bad side. Or we only attend to the bad side of people, and we don't want to see the good. We start to treat people as these like larger kind of group identities, and start to see them kind of like flat, as good or bad. You're a Trump supporter or you're not. You're Indian or you're not Indian, you're white or you're black, whatever it is, then we start to have these larger group identities. But what we want to do is to help people see that the things you see as bad can sometimes be good, can have good to them. Things you see as good can sometimes have bad to them, and integrate the two over time. So these two representations of the mother, they're, a very primal way of, in our culture, in our religious traditions, expressing this idea that psychoanalysts have identified it in different language much later, which is that the mother, as much as she's caring, can also be repulsive and dark and make us think of death and make us think of these things we all fear. And that death is necessary for transformation. The separation from the mother, the end of that union is so necessary in us becoming an evolved individual. And yet, technically, we still never leave her because she's always a part of us. So this is the divine paradox of the mother, that she's never one or the other. She's always both. She's both a part of you and she's not a part of you. You need to separate from her, and yet she's always going to be a part of you. And I really love what I read this person says about Kali. He's a big devotee of Kali, and he says, if I am living 24/7 in the lap of Kali, the way she looks and the way she is, how can I be afraid of anything else? How can I be afraid of anything in life if this is the one who I call my mother? So seeing it like there is like a complete care and love, even in this terrifying image. This is I took a shloka from the, I spelled it wrong here, Sri Devi Atharvashirsham from the Atharva Veda. So this again illustrates the paradox. Esha Atma Shakti, Esha Vishwamohini, Pashan Kusha Vanadhara, Esha Sri Mahavidya, Ya Evam Veda Shokam Tarati, Shokam Tarati. She is the essential power of the absolute reality. So she is, completely exalted. She is the enchantress. She is Mohini, Vishwa Mohini. She enchants the whole world, which, in a lot of ways can be seen as not such a good thing. If we think about, how people view women, she's seductive. She's trying too hard. She's trying too hard to be seductive. She's trying to pull people in. People see it as a manipulation, right? So we'll talk more about that. She is the snare, the hook, and the arrow. So she is that thing that draws you further in to attachment, in a way. She draws you further into desire, into the world, the hook, the arrow. She's pulling you in. The arrow, we also associate Kamadeva with desire, with, that's like the Hindu Eros, Cupid. And she's the greatest wisdom. She's the greatest wisdom beyond all desire. And when you know this paradox, you can cross samsara. So this is where we come to her nature as Maya, because Mahamaya is the goddess. So there's these two other quotes that I think tie into what I was saying before. Samsara Navatarini. She is basically that boat itself that delivers us across the ocean of life and death. So she delivers us across samsara. Then there's a great quote from the Durga Suktam, where she is, we seek the refuge of Durga, who is Sutara Sitara Se Namaha. I bow to the one who is the best among swimmers. So she loves to swim. She does her laps. She does her laps down at the pool. Because she is the one who swims with us. So she's not only the boat carrying us, she swims along with us, right at our side. To and fro across samsara. So samsara is, the cycle of life and death, this birth and death that's happening over and over. So she's a part of it. She is Maya. She is the illusion, because really we know, at the basis of it, right? We have Shiva, who's Purusha. He is, the fact that there is this reality beyond everything else. But then we have the creation, the Maya, the energy that has energized all of it and created all of this stuff and this world that we keep having to come back over and over into. So we can kind of see it as like, people are like, okay, well, then isn't she bad, right? Because she's keeping us in samsara. No, she is swimming along with us in it, and she is it. Because she connects us to the magic of our desires. Because our desires actually, if you really swim along with her, you're going to see that your desires and being in touch with your desires actually bring you more into touch with your dharma. So we'll talk more about that. But, Mahamaya, she's the enchanter, she's the seductress. So I mentioned that before. But she's not a manipulator, because what is actual seduction? So real seduction, we talk about a woman who is actually seductive, especially because we think of women as seductive. We don't talk about men that much as seductive. No offense. No offense to the seductive men out there, because you can if you want to be. But, we talk about seduction. The real seductive woman is not the woman who's trying too hard. You can tell when a woman is really trying to be something she's not. A real seductive woman, she can wear what she feels most comfortable in, whether it's basketball shorts and a t-shirt, or, that fancy dress she got from Nordstrom, whatever it is. And because she knows you already can't resist her, she doesn't have to do anything. She just is herself, and she pulls you in because she is so strong. And you can just see like her connection with herself like radiates from her, and it's really enthralling. So that's real seduction, is actually, she knows you already want it, and she just has to be herself and bring the walls down, and you just get pulled in. And that's exactly what she is. That's what Shakti is. That she is a seductress in that she knows you want it. She knows what you want, and she pulls you in because she knows it's good for you, because it's most aligned with your purpose. So she's not the one who pulls you into doing things that are ignoble, that are away from your dharma, that pull you away from your purpose, that pull you away from the pleasures that are really intrinsic to you. she brings your deep desires to the surface, and that freaks people out sometimes because we have some sort of construction of what we think we are. This is what, there's a psychologist, Carl Rogers, he talks about the self, the constructed self, the ideal self. So we have this like version of ourselves that we think we are. The ego, ahamkara, is basically that, right? It is part of that, constructs that. So there's this version of ourselves that we would like to think we are. I would like people to think that I am this, intelligent, put together woman, and I'm, a professor, and I'm this, and I'm like cool or something like that. All right, so I have this constructed, maybe I'd like people to think I'd like my parents to think I'm a good daughter. I'd like my brother to think I'm a good sister. So we have this idealized image. And sometimes she's going to bring you in touch with desires that are in conflict with what you think you are. But they're really deep desires that are actually so intrinsic to your purpose. So for example, she will, you're a freshman and you're a pre-med student, and, you've always liked, you've always wanted to start a bookstore. You like books, but you're like, oh, whatever, that's like stupid. I need to just do pre-med because my parents are telling me I need to do pre-med, and I'm really good at bio anyway and chemistry, and it's like a really good field, and I just really want to help people. So you're a pre-med student, and it's great. And then, you realize one day you're feeling really sad, you go to a bookstore and you're like, I feel really good in this bookstore. And you remember that dream you had of starting a bookstore, but you're like, whatever, I'm just going to study here for my orgo class, like a good student. And then another time, you go on a date and someone brings you to this combination bookstore cafe, and you're like, oh, that's weird. This is like kind of what I wanted to do in my life. And then another time you're fundraising for a club and someone comes up with the idea, let's do a book swap. Oh, this thing about bookstores and books keeps coming back to me. She will put you in these situations that bring that deep down desire to the surface, because maybe you're not meant for pre-med, but you don't want to admit that. That freaks you out because that means you're going to disappoint your parents. You're also going to disappoint this idea of who you thought you were, because you thought pre-med is the only way to help people. You don't realize that this deep down desire that only you have, that is specific to you, is also your way of helping people in this world. Because when it comes to desire, and when it comes to those things that are most in alignment with who you are, sometimes it will freak other people out because they expected something out of you and you're not that. They can deal with it, they can find a way to deal with it, but no one wants the things that you want in the specific way that you want it. So there's plenty of people out there who maybe want their dream job or want a partner. Maybe I want a professorship, right? There's plenty of people who want it, but no one wants to write about what I want to write about. No one wants to study what I want. No one wants to do the research I want. No one wants to, be at this specific, like a small liberal arts school, whatever it is, the specific combination of things that I want and I want to be, no one else wants to be it. And that, when it's in alignment with your truest self, your most authentic self, those desires are what she leads you towards. And when she wants to give you something, she creates a situation in which you must accept it, or even that you're forced to ask for it, finally. She will turn you away from everything else in your life and deliver the fruits of your karmas to you in a way that sometimes might feel painful, so you hate her. But you have no choice but to focus on your divine path. So that means sometimes you feel like everything's smooth sailing. All of a sudden, this guy that you thought you were into, he's like suddenly like, I don't want a relationship anymore. You're like, what? And then all these other projects you were working on, they start to fall apart. What? How did that happen? And then all you have to focus on right now is maybe, and then your family's not talking to you, whatever. All this stuff is starting to fall apart. You're like, oh my God, like what is happening in my life? But weirdly, some stuff is coming through in your career. You start to get these job offers that are just like, wait, I never thought I could do that thing, but now I'm getting offers for it. Okay, and you still might be focusing on what you've lost, and grief is okay. You're focusing on the suffering, but she will deliver the fruits of your karmas to you, which might include some suffering, right? But she, in a way that it feels painful, I've lost all these things, but now you're focusing in on this thing in your career. You're forced that the only like good thing going on in my life, or the thing that feels most aligned, is my career. And maybe that's what you're meant to focus on right now. And actually to level up your worth and understand that, those opportunities that are coming that you thought you were never worthy of, well, now's the time to do it. So she will deliver every single desire to you, lifetime after lifetime. So if you're somebody who really loves, I don't know, you love self-serve ice cream, vanilla ice cream, in every lifetime, she will give you as much ice cream as you want until you're exhausted of ice cream. You're like, please, no more ice cream. And then once you're exhausted of that, you seek something else. So it's a different sort of relationship with desire that we might see in Advaita Vedanta traditions, for example, which seem to be desire negating. That said, who wrote the Saundarya Lahiri, which is a beautiful poem about Devi, about Shakti? It was Shankaracharya. So Shankaracharya knows all this, right? They're not actually in conflict. So there's ways to read into both of these traditions, right? But if you can actually dive deep into your desires and get every single thing you want and really like what feels most aligned with you. And some of you might be thinking, well, of course, then why don't I get $1 million? Some of you deep down actually don't want $1 million. It would be nice, but is it most alignment and with your heart and with your like deep essence? No, actually it's not. You don't want to be a millionaire. You might want to do something with that $1 million. Maybe deep down, actually who you are is somebody who wants one of those 12-bedroom mansions in New Jersey. And that's, for some people, deep down, that's what they want. And once they have it, they're exhausted of, they feel the pleasure of it, they're exhausted of it, and now finally they can be rid of it. Maybe not in this lifetime, maybe the next lifetime they get another Jersey mansion, right? And they get the full pleasure of it, and finally at some point they will be exhausted of it, and they will transition to maybe a higher desire or a different type of desire. But she wants you to enjoy it first. Life is meant to be enjoyed along the way, and all the feelings are meant to be enjoyed along the way. You can't skip a step. You could try to, but remember, she's going to pull you back. She has the rope, and she's going to pull you back. So what this all has to do with psychoanalysis also is the fact that like desire is so at the root of and repressed desire, repressed feelings are so at the root of many of our psychological conflicts. We repress them into the unconscious. So there's the conscious mind that we are aware of, the thoughts, feelings, behaviors that we're aware of, and then there's the unconscious mind. So this is the part that we're the functions of the mind that we're not consciously aware of or aren't consciously aware that we're doing. So those could be things like breathing, your hunger, your thirst. You can't quite control that unless you're like this amazing yogi. You can't really control those deep drives. But also we have desires and feelings down there that we want to pretend we don't have. So the process of psychotherapy, especially in the psychoanalytic theoretical orientation, is to help people bring those desires to the surface. And some of those desires, those deep down desires, are going to be things like I really want to be seen by others, and yet I'm so afraid of it. So that's the conflict. I want you to see me, and yet if you see me, I'm so afraid of what you're going to see. So I don't want you to see me, right? So there's a conflict. They could be feelings that I'm actually low-key really angry at my mom, and I don't want to admit that because she's such a beautiful person. That doesn't mean you can't be mad at your mom, but we repress these feelings. So through the process of psychotherapy, you bring these feelings, dreams, desires, wishes, everything to the surface so people could see it, and it stops running your life under the surface. Because if you don't see it and you keep repressing it or defending, it's actually low-key running your life. You're still acting it out against other people or lashing out or being passive aggressive or whatever we do, but it's still a part of your life. So she, this is the approach of Shakti as well. She's bringing all the hidden stuff up to the surface so you can make friends with it. So you can make friends with the parts of yourself that you hate. Actually, let me go here. So this is when it comes to the mixing of the inner divine masculine and feminine. And I want to just explain this a little bit more. So this is not gender identity. It's also not necessarily quite presented on a binary. There are two sides, but it's considered to be a spectrum. But your gender identity can be anything. You can be, you can identify as a cisgender male, cisgender female, as non-binary, as trans, whatever you identify as your gender identity. But the inner, when we talk about your inner masculine and feminine, it's actually more like has to do with your inner, it could be partially your sexual essence, but there's sort of an alignment of the self towards one of these two sides. And it gets confusing because we have assigned these labels, masculine and feminine, to it. But, you could say solar and lunar. Maybe that makes it less confusing. Or you could say yin and yang, or, Ida Pingala, whatever it is. But it's really well illustrated by, masculine and feminine figures, because there are plenty of cisgender males out there who mostly identify with, and their inner nature is more weighted on the masculine side, and others who are more weighted on the feminine side. There can be someone who, identifies in terms of their gender as a male, but inside, the way that they kind of relate to themselves, the way that they relate to their beloved others, and the way they relate to people intimately is a more feminine style. You might know some of these couples that they're a heterosexual couple, a man and a woman, but the woman is a little more concerned with, what is our purpose? What is the direction our relationship is taking? She has more of the overall vision. She has a little more of this like linearity to her. And the man he's like, well, I'm concerned about the relationship. I'm concerned about the feelings between us, the more day-to-day kind of movement of the relationship. And they're still a heterosexual couple. It has nothing to do with their gender identity, but their inner kind of alignment, that energy that they're aligned with, actually might be the woman who has more of the masculine. So there's nothing wrong with that, and there's also, some people who are truly in a neutral place, truly who don't really find themselves on either side. There are also people who are, truly in an inner sense aligned with the feminine, but they've tricked themselves into thinking they're masculine or neutral. So there's a lot of ways to look at this, but we'll explore actually what does this look like. Okay, so the inner masculine, so we all have both of these inside of us. So we have this image of Ardhanarishwara, which is half Shiva and half Shakti. And they are always actually dancing inside of us. We have both. But as I said, some of us have a stronger balance, more of the Shakti, some have more of the Shiva. So the masculine side is that side of us, the part of us that it wants predictability, security, groundedness, stability. It's pure presence. And it's focused on purpose and meaning. It can sometimes favor, to pull away from the world. The world sometimes feels like a little much, and it pulls away. Okay. The feminine side is spontaneity, goes with the flow. It's mystery. It's always free to be moved by love and emotion. So people say this is, she's, too emotional. No, always free to be moved by the heart. And it's ecstasy. So both are at the ground of spiritual experience, is this deep presence, right? Spiritual experience is pretty much all learning how to be present in the present moment. But the feminine is the ecstasy of it all, is the height and exaltation of the spiritual experience. And so all of us have both of these inside of us. But the feminine freaks people out for a lot of reasons. Spontaneity, what is that? We live in a society where everything has to be rigid and scheduled. That is usually more masculine leaning. And, I'm in New York City. This is a very masculine place to live. Everything is, predictable except for the subway, everything's predictable on time. Everything is in a rigid, particular way. And as a feminine person, actually, you can almost fall in love with the city. You can fall in love with the city because it's like your opposite, that it's like the polar opposite that really attracts you. And then, right, there are some people who are masculine, very masculine men, but they fall in love with nature. And or they fall in love with their music, musicians especially. Is music itself, nature is feminine by nature, it has a feminine essence, spontaneous mystery, it's moving. And, it takes a really strong person to be able to pull a man like that away from his music or away from his nature, because how do you contend with the awesome power of the feminine power of nature and music? So, okay. But we all have these things inside of us, but it freaks people out. The feminine, we tend to, mystery. What is that? So especially when we talk about the shadow, the parts of ourselves we don't want to see. So there's this great author. Her name is Jean Shinoda Bolen. I think she's a psychiatrist. She wrote this book, Goddesses in Every Woman. And she talks about the pantheon of Greek goddesses that exists in every woman. And essentially saying that, so men are linear by nature, and men, people who have a masculine essence, tend to identify more with the hero's journey. So it's a linear progression through life. That basically every great hero throughout history, every legend we have follows a progression, where there's a story of Heracles, Gilgamesh, Rama, Krishna. Well, Krishna is a little different. We'll talk about this guy. He's a very interesting guy. He's an interesting one. So, the Jesus, they follow this similar kind of progression, a birth, which some miracle of birth, oppression faced at an early age, having to leave the home, feeling a sense of wandering, feeling lost. He finds a mentor. The mentor, empowers him. He goes off and he starts to face these challenges, which make him more and more into a man. He finally, has to rescue the partner. So this is the part where we come into union with the feminine, when he's finally becoming a man who proves himself, and then he's exalted and gains providence. Either he becomes a demigod, or he is himself a deity, or he is the savior of men, or whatever it is. So men tend to, masculine gendered people or masculine essence people tend to identify more with that hero's journey through, and they like to see their life, and they identify with seeing their life as this linear progression of steps. The feminine is different. So the feminine is constantly cycling through all of these different forms. So there's part of your life you're going to notice sometimes you're feeling like a Lakshmi. Your life is, you're feeling like, what is most in alignment for me at this moment is to be this beautiful, seductive woman, centered in my sensuality. And that is the gift I give the world. The fact that I can be centered in that is the gift I give the world. There's going to be times in your life where you're like, the maternal aspect, the role I take of taking care of my children and being protective and, and having that power. So it's more like a Durga. In this part of my life, I'm Durga. Other parts of my life where I'm like, justice needs to be served, and I'm going to be who I want to be. I am who I am, but y'all are going to get it. It's time. That's when you're Kali or Bagalamukhi. There's going to be times where you're sort of inward facing and you're a bit like, this is time for me to delve into some study. That's when you're Saraswati, you're Athena. And interesting, all of these guys is actually a very interesting connections. Athena is born from the brain of Zeus. Zeus thinks he has a headache, but actually Athena is breaking out of his head. She's born from the head of her father. And Saraswati is born from her father, Brahma. Lakshmi and Aphrodite, they're very similar. They're born from the ocean. There's all of these. Anyway, we can get into that. There's Artemis, Diana. She's the lunar goddess, and she's the goddess of the hunt. She don't need no man. She just needs her friends. And a lot of the time, women, we find ourselves in that place like, oh, hell no. Relationship, who is that? I don't know him. No. I don't want that. I don't want that. And other times where you are so enriched by the possibility of partnership, and partnership is like, brings out, the partner is your mirror. They bring out the best in you. So we, as women, we are always cycling through these. And sometimes there are times in our life where there's months and years where we identify more with a certain goddess. Sometimes it's 2 weeks. Someone harms you, someone hurts someone you love, just wait. I'm going to show you my Chandi Roop. A lot of people in India say, you hear like when a woman is ready, it's ready to fight, Chandi Roop, her Chandi Roop is coming out, her Durga Roop is coming out. And we're always flowing through. And a lot of people don't like that. That women are unpredictable. I can never guess this woman's mood. She's here and there. She lies to me. She's telling me she doesn't want anything to eat, but I could see on her face she wants something to eat. But that's the nature of the feminine essence. It's always in movement. And actually for the other person to be able to meet it with that masculine groundedness of like, maybe, maybe sometimes the feminine wants the masculine to show that you can trust me enough to set the direction and actually did make a decision. Actually, if you were an empowered masculine kind of enough, you could make a decision. I trust you in it, and actually it wouldn't make me mad. So there's so many things about the feminine that people don't like, but we all have it within us. And so, what does that mean? I was talking about all these different forms of the goddess and of the feminine, and it's not just a nurturing mother. So, and a lot of world traditions where there might be some feminine presence. Sometimes it's what we call the phallic mother in psychoanalysis, which is the mother who has taken on masculine qualities. So it looks like a woman on the outside, but on the inside, it has these masculine qualities. So that would be like the alma mater idea. So she's a woman who takes on the characteristics of institutional, of institutions and of systems. So feminine on the outside, but really masculine values on the inside. If she was truly feminine, she would be nature. She wouldn't be the institution. She would be unpredictable, moving nature. And sometimes there are certain like mother-like figures that are recognized in different world traditions, but they're, that's the extent we can do. We can have the mother, but we can't put these like sexual, unpredictable kind of women out there in the front. It's going to freak people out. But the feminine is not just the nurturing mother. And even as a mother, and as someone who is maternal, takes a maternal role in the world. So like, I am not someone who has children, but I have a lot of clients, I have patients, and I'm very maternal towards them, even if they're older than me. We can be maternal towards people in our life, towards our friends, our loved ones, even if they're not literally our children. And then you have to ask yourself, so what is your relationship with your inner mother? Have you established manageable boundaries with your loved ones? Or do you have to always be over involved in telling them what to do? That's not a balanced maternal instinct. Do I mirror others' feelings and expectations, or do I only expect them to mirror me? And what mirroring can mean is like, so let's say you're playing with a baby, and sometimes the baby will laugh. Mirroring is when the baby laughs and you laugh back. You're like, the baby's laughing, and you're like, yeah, it's funny, right? The baby cries and you're like, oh no, did you hurt yourself? So you're mirroring the feelings. Similarly, expectations. So if the other person is like, you're meeting their bid for connection. The other person is like, they say they love flowers, and they're like, hey, look, there's a rose over there, that you're like, oh, wow, that's such a pretty rose. You're mirroring their feelings and their expectations, and it feels good, even if you don't care about flowers, but those are moments of connection. Or do you only expect others to mirror me? So if mom is angry, everyone else gotta, everyone else has to either be angry like her about the same thing, or they can't have any feelings. They have to sort of just like create a world around her anger. Or if my mom, if I have certain expectations, everyone else has to follow it. This family has rules. We don't do that in this family. That's not a well-developed maternal. It's like a maternalism that is coming from a place of low self-worth. And am I dependent on other people's dependence on me? So can I only feel good in a relationship if I'm saving the other person or fixing the other person, or the other person is not doing well? It's okay to be in a relationship with people who are struggling with mental illness. That's fine. But will the relationship survive if they start feeling better? Or do you always need to be in the caretaking role? Can you identify things you like about people? Or are you just kind of there because they need you? There's plenty of times I ask people, my clients, like questions like, so what are you looking for in a friendship? And they can't answer. They're like, I guess someone with the same values as me. I don't really know. But they have all these friends that they're taking care of. So just because other people needs them to be dependent, they're like, oh, that person's my friend. And they get to be in this like caretaking role. But there is no sense of like what they want in relationships outside of being needed. That's not good. We don't want to do that. We're not doing that. Not doing that in 2021. So all of these aspects of the feminine are things that, so like, I think even if you wanted to do like a journaling activity for each of these words, it could be a really cool thing to do, because these are all aspects of the feminine and they could be hidden. So resonating with others, how do you feel you do with that? How is that for you? Beauty. Are you afraid of seeing yourself as beautiful? Are you afraid of showing your beauty to others? What's that about? Because beauty is power. Literally, as I said, Shankaracharya wrote this whole treatise on the beauty of the goddess, Saundarya Lahari, the wave of beauty. It's power, it's Shakti. Connected. Are you afraid of feeling connected to others? What about that doesn't feel good? The erotic. So it could be the sexual, but erotic has to do with the two coming together as one. Sensuality. What's your relationship with that? With embodied practice, things involving being in touch with your body, movement, touch, even martial arts, those are embodied practices. Going with the flow with natural rhythms, or do you need everything to be scheduled? And the veiled aspects of ourselves, the shadow. So what I like to remind people also is that like what you most fear to see in yourself is a part of you. And that's okay. You know, like sometimes I might be afraid to tell people like how much I care about them, right? Or something. Or that I still think about them a lot, or I miss them. And I'm so afraid of being seen as this like crazy, like this crazy woman. And as much as it's not true that I'm crazy just for caring about people, I do have a crazy woman inside of me. I also have a wise woman inside of me. I have a mom inside of me. I have a daughter. I have all of it. So we contain all these things, and that's okay. We have a Kali inside, and that's okay. So we are actually, yes, we are up to our discussion and questions part. It would be great if you shared it in the chat box. I'm okay with unmuting it, but I don't know how you feel about that because this is also live streamed. If you want to ask me anything privately, you can really feel free to email me or DM me on Instagram. And it's okay if you're watching this after the fact, you can still reach out to me. But yes, I'd love to hear also things that resonated with you or something you heard today that was like new and you're going to think about more.
Sarika or Dr. Persaud, I'm like really moved and I'm almost close to tears. I mean, I'm gonna lay all my cards on the table. I was texting Vineet during this session. I texted him, she's a genius and I'm obsessed. And I stand by those comments. This is just so so illuminating, so creative, so well thought out. I just like all props to you. You're such an excellent presenter and clearly in tune with your own spirituality to be able to share it in this way with people. I'm really, really blown away. As I always am with you. And as a longtime follower of the Dr. Samosa account, all of those here, please go on Instagram and please follow. So I actually had a question about Kali and what it means to be a devotee of hers. So I associate devotion with like the feeling of love. And I've often kind of lived my life like according to the principle of trying to operate out of love. And fear, I guess I'm curious about how devotees of Kali come to terms with fear, or maybe I'm just misunderstanding what fear is in the presence of Kali. Perhaps it's like a love that has tinges of fear, but maybe it's not fear as we mean in the colloquial sense. So I'd love for you to speak more about fear and its place in loving devotion.
Yeah, thank you so much for your kind words, first of all. You're so sweetie. Thank you. Yes, so our fears are our triggers. So the things that trigger us into fear are very personal to us. The same thing that I'm afraid of, you might not be afraid of. The same thing that gives me anxiety, might not give you anxiety. So they are very personal to us, and they show us the places in ourselves where we have more room to grow and things to learn about ourselves. So let's say a fear for me could be anytime I'm about to go hang out with my friends, I get this anxiety about, well, what if they didn't really want to hang out? And what if I forced this on them and, they don't really want to see me? So the fear is that I'm unwanted. And this is what Freud calls the wish and the fear, the wish and the fear. So then every fear tells us about a hidden wish. So the fear I have is that I'm unwanted and no one loves me. The desire I have, so the flip side, the fear exposes the wish or the desire. And the desire is that I really want to feel loved. I want to feel accepted. And maybe there are ways that I'm pushing away being loved and accepted because I'm afraid of acknowledging I want to be loved and accepted. There's something about being loved and accepted that feels weak to me, maybe. So I tell myself my friends don't want to see me, and so I cancel. I tell myself that people don't want to see me, and so I don't post on Instagram so people know what's up and they can't comment on my life and like connect, you know? So our fears lead us to our desires that are deep hidden down. And therefore, if we face our fears and actually dive into them and do the thing we're afraid of, we're going to grow. So Kali is that. She is the growth that comes through fear. And I also feel that when you are really in touch with the fears you have, even like, so the fear of my friends hating me, for example, you know, we might consider it less legitimate because someone could see someone and just say, well, you know, your friends love you, right? But don't be anxious about that. There's other fears in the world, just like, you know, I'm afraid of men, you know, a man hurting me. I'm afraid of a man, like, you know, physically hurting me, which happens to women, right? Women get like physically attacked all the time. This world is not such a safe place for women. And yet, even so, that doesn't mean I'm telling you go out and tell a man to like hurt you, right? But to sit with that fear. I'm afraid of what the masculine has done to me. I'm afraid the masculine will not protect me. I'm afraid that men actually don't want to protect me. They want to hurt me. Actually conceals the wish, which is that I wish the masculine in my life protected me and saved me. I wish the masculine felt safe for me. And that tells us a lot about our history with our fathers and with men in our life. So that's what it's meant by coming into contact with our fears, that Kali takes every fear and makes it a transformative experience for us and something for us to grow and learn from. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you so much. Very, very eloquently said, as has everything been before. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, I see some questions in the chat, so I'm going to start to like go through. Okay, Rebecca, can you talk a little bit about Tibetan goddesses, especially Tara? Well, Tara is the main one I'm familiar with and connected with. So Tara is, there's like what they say is the white Tara and the green Tara, two different forms of her, but they're essentially the same as the light and dark goddess. So there's different kind of mythology around Tara. Some say she is the female Buddha, so she's the feminine form of Buddha. And you know, many Buddhists understand Buddha is not a person, it's a state. So it's the feminine enlightened state. And that's what white Tara is. And she is, you know, she appears to like Padmasambhava, all these different spiritual aspirants through time. And they say when you can empty the sky of your mind, which in Sanskrit is called Chidakasha. So actually Shiva, whatever, that's what clothes Shiva, it's all connected, right? So we clear the sky of our mind, clear the clouds, those thoughts and feelings and everything that gets in the way. You will see a lotus will blossom and Tara will be there. That's what she is. And she is your intuition. So she is the divine revelation. So being in touch with your intuition and learning to find out what that voice is and trust the inner compass is Tara. That's the relationship with Tara. The other Tara is the green Tara, who is the fierce Tara. And she's the one who's fiercely protective of her children. And she is sitting, I like how she sits. She's sitting with one leg folded in meditation and the other leg down, hanging down from her where she's sitting, because she's always ready to run and help you. So as soon as you call on her, you can call on her once and she'll come. She's also the goddess of new beginnings because she's also the goddess of death. The green Tara is very similar to Kali. And then we have a form of the green Tara called Smashan Tara. So Tara, you know, might be indigenous to Tibet, but we also see forms of her in Bengal and Jharkhand. So, you know, this whole area of the world is very connected. And Smashan Tara is the Tara who lives in the cremation grounds. And so she is the one who shows you like the very thing that repulses you and fear, and the moment of death is her too. You know, everything about you know, having to die to the world to become a new you, that is part of Tara. Okay, so that's what I'll say about Tara. I really love her also. So thank you for asking about her. Also, interesting you're asking about her. She's been coming up a lot for me. I think it's a sign. Okay. Preeti says, I love the idea of aligning the dark and the light side of our personality without attachment of guilt and shame. Yeah, that's right, because it's all a part of us and it's all good. You don't have to, you just accept it. No shame about it. Okay, I'll see if there's, I think we have a couple of minutes, so I'll see if there's any other questions or comments.
Hi, can I ask you a question, Sarika?
Yes.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, thanks, Dr. Persaud. Your talk was very nice, very insightful as well. I guess my question is, And if I get this right, like if we've got the symbolism of the Devis and the sort of goddesses representing almost a kind of an external projection of a subtle concept or a lesson or a meaning, and then it's sort of symbolized in a creative, artistic, and formed manner. Taking that sort of psychological understanding and then the actual sort of dharmic view or Vedantic view, whatever we call it, religious view across all different civilizations, we take it up to the idea of a formless divine like Brahman or whatever word we use. Is that the same or a similar thing to the super unconscious, or how can we, from this sort of psychological understanding, try and encapsulate the idea of Brahman, and then map out a way? I don't know, map out a way to Brahman, or try and put it in a modern day terminology, or so forth. Thank you, Sarika.
Yes, thank you so much. I think so. The way I can explain this is through another concept in psychoanalysis that's called transference. So what that means is, so we understand that me as a therapist, the way it kind of works is I don't reveal too much about myself. I'm sort of a blank slate. I'm not coming in and telling the patient, hi, I'm from New York. This is where I grew up. This is where I'm from. You don't know too much about me. And therefore, the client can project onto me, as if I'm a movie screen, can project onto me anything they want. They can project a mother, which they usually do, a father, a daughter, a sister, whatever they need to see. And whatever they need to see is what they need to work on right now. However, underneath it all is still me. The consistent, real thing is me underneath it. But they see in me whatever they need to, because that's where they need to do the work right now. So very similarly, that's kind of how we think of Brahman, right? So Brahman is this consistent absolute reality underneath everything. And when we confront the projections and work with the projections, because they love us, right? Durga loves us, Kali loves us. They're real. They're not just fake, right? Like the way I'm talking about a client projecting. It's really real it's very real. They will lead us towards the underlying love and truth underneath all of it. Because once the client can start to see what they're projecting onto me, then they can start to see me as the real person again and what I really am. So once we realize why we need to see these certain deities, why we need to work with them and jump into it and dive into it, at a certain point, we'll actually even release our attachment to seeing Kali and seeing Durga and seeing Lakshmi. We're just gonna, okay, we don't even desire that anymore. We're just gonna have this nirgun form, but most of us are not there yet.
No, thank you, Om. That's very nice. It's quite assuring, that sort of transcending all the projections or vasanas that we have, and this is my, I guess, individual subjective experience of this. What you've just said, that the idea that then we almost unfold into that goddess or god, and then all there remains is that reality, the Brahman, and that duality is, I guess, under that umbrella of Maya, which is all real from a Maya perspective. But I guess what they say in physics, the idea of a total mind or an Ishvara kind of concept. But it's definitely really interesting because it's these goddesses have stood the test of time, and all the conquering and all the things that have happened and the sort of similarities. So there's obviously a lot of profound truth there. But thank you.
Right. Thank you. Okay, last question. Do you have any recommendations for resources on how to learn more about different Shakti traditions? If I want to read the Saundarya Lahiri, is there a particular translation you recommend? I do, but I don't have it with me right now. So anyone who's interested, like, you can DM me or email me. I'll tell you my translation. I don't have it with me. And I really trust the Sanskrit in it. To learn more about different Shakti traditions, well, there's so many different routes to go. There's the like Kola traditions, there's Trika Shaivism, Kashmiri Shaivism, all these different things. So, the first thing you can do is, I really love Dr. Robert Svoboda, and I'll put his name in the chat. He's like, I don't know if he's a psychologist, he's some kind of scholar. And he's really deeply understood the tantras and the tantric tradition. So if you look him up, he has courses on his site, which are pretty affordable, I think, where you can learn more about all the different goddess traditions and get very deep into tantric philosophy and psychology and all these different concepts, ancestor worship, what is karma, laws of karma. He's really legit, but he sees it all from the Shakta perspective. And it's a good jumping off point because he'll mention some of these other kind of ways of like, philosophical perspectives, darshanas, and you can look into it that way. Other books that I would recommend are the inner and okay, I don't remember the title, but David Frawley has some good books. Some of you might have heard of him. Frawley, Neela Bhattacharya Saxena. I really love her. She's like one of my mentors. She has this book called my brain is blanking. She has The Absent Mother God of the West, and she has another really great book that you should definitely read. Yeah, that's it for now, but you can DM me when I go home and I look at my bookshelf. I'll see what else. I don't have too many books here.
Well, thank you so much, Sarika, once again, for your generosity of time and wisdom and sparking so much thought, bringing so many things together. Really just a wonderful presentation. We hope to be able to go a little bit deeper even. So maybe we can have you back at some point and either virtually or in person, and we can kind of dig into some of these concepts. I feel like perhaps in some ways we're just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
But thank you again, and what a wonderful way to mark such an auspicious and festive occasion. So we want to wish everyone who's observing a very, very happy Navratri, happy Durga Puja. And again, on behalf of the Hindu Life program at Princeton University, we thank you all for joining us tonight.